Colleges and universities across the nation still assessing the impact of the recent Supreme Court decision eliminating race as a factor in college admissions. It essentially ends affirmative action. In his majority opinion, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote, "Eliminating racial discrimination means eliminating all of it." In her dissenting opinion, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote, "Deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life." Although the cases involve two large universities, Harvard and the University of North Carolina, the ruling affects colleges large and small across the nation. The president of Linfield University in McMinnville told us after the 6-3 Supreme Court ruling that his university is still committed to bringing in a wide diversity of students.
Which is why we have a first generation program that we emphasize economic mobility, which the institution has won awards for the past 4 years. And we support students as a means to enhancing their lives, their families' lives, their community lives, and even the lives of this nation.
Here in studio to talk about the impact of the Supreme Court decision, Linfield University's Vice President of Enrollment Management and Student Success, Gerardo Ochoa. Welcome to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thank you for having me.
Well, President Davis's statement seems to indicate that Linfield emphasizes economic status over race as a factor in admissions. So will this Supreme Court decision affect Linfield at all?
We suspect that it will have very little effect on our practices, policies, and procedures, but we are, of course, going to look at everything that we do to make sure that we're abiding by the ruling. 5 years ago, we made a transition from being focused on supporting our students based on race in terms of diversity scholarships and other support systems to one where we now focus on first generation status. What we learned and what we found is that by focusing on first generation status, it covers that umbrella of first gen, covers a lot of students based on different ethnicities, races, and lived experiences in Oregon and throughout the West Coast, which is primarily where our students come from.
How diverse is Linfield?
We are fortunately considered one of the most diverse liberal arts universities in the Northwest. About 40% of our students are U.S. students of color. About 50% of our incoming class, for example, is self-identifies as first generation, meaning they are first in their families to attend the four-year universities. We have a significant number of transfer students who come to Linfield, and we have a good number of students who are low or Pell eligible students. When you take those four buckets, 60% of our students are now what we consider the new majority students.
And you've got about 1,700 students on campus then, right?
That's correct. And that's one of that is one of the benefits of attending at Linfield University and other small institutions like Linfield, because each of the students who attends an institution that is small is going to get that attention from faculty and staff. And ultimately what we're focused on is outcomes. We want to graduate students in 4 years, and we want to be first in the state to do so.
The court did allow for students to describe how race affects their lives in the application essay to colleges. Is that a loophole in this ruling?
You could argue that. I mean, we've already been considering students' experiences in a wide variety of ways in the way they write about it in the admission application. While we cannot ask it, the ruling does not prohibit students from disclosing it. And so we're going to be looking at when we take the holistic admission review process, we'll look at lived experience, we'll look at adversity, certainly SATs that are now being less important in the college admission process. GPA is certainly a factor that will be looked at. Ultimately, we want to admit students that are going to be placed in a position to have success at Linfield.
Now, I benefited from affirmative action when I attended Cornell University. This was back in the 1970s, though, the late 70s. They were aggressively recruiting people like me back then. The question is there still a need for affirmative action overall, or has that time passed?
I think there's a need to be strategic and for college and universities to go out and recruit the students they want to admit. Whether it's students like you or me, from the East Coast or West Coast, I think it's imperative for each university to identify the students they want to serve. Are they local? Are they national? Are they international? So I'm glad that they recruited you, and I think universities should do more of it, regardless of what affirmative action tools exist or not. They should have been doing that, and colleges need to continue to do that moving forward.
Along those lines, do you anticipate that this ruling will reduce the number of minority students on most college campuses?
That is left to be seen. I think that's the big question mark. I think the message to many students of color is I'm no longer important in higher ed, and that is my concern. That the students who have been historically excluded from higher education will self-select out. We as a country have a need to serve all students to be reflective of the communities we serve. Certainly here in Oregon in the Northwest, we've seen big demographic changes, and it's imperative that each college and university strive to serve the communities they ultimately represent. So my fear is that students will not consider higher education because of this message that was just sent at the national level. I think it's a responsibility of each university to do what they can to serve all of the students they admit.
I've been reading articles about this since the decision, and one of the theories is that historically black colleges, called HBCUs, will see more applications and more enrollment. Do you anticipate that this could be a fallout from this decision?
Yeah, I think that's what scholars are predicting, because we saw that before. We have to remember that affirmative action is now has been ultimately outlawed in 10 different states, and that is what we saw in California, where students that would have been admitted into highly selective institutions, they wound up enrolling in other types of institutions that are less selective. Because another way to think about colleges and universities that are very selective, they're also very rejective, meaning they reject a lot of students. So the question is, where are the students who are being rejected at these highly selected institutions going? And they go to places where they're wanted. HBCUs are one example. HSIs, Hispanic Serving Institutions, are another example. So while they may not ultimately end up in an institution that is highly selective, I hope and I really wish that those students will enroll somewhere.
One of the other things that the Supreme Court did was to not approve President Biden's plan to forgive thousands of dollars of student debt. I don't know how much that would affect the students who go to Linfield, how much debt they take on to go to Linfield. But what are your thoughts on that? What do you think the impact of not having student loan forgiveness will be?
Well, I think I'm torn on this one. On the one hand, I want everybody who accepted loans and debt as a way for social mobility. They accepted this debt. And on the one hand, if you accepted this responsibility, which is funded by taxpayers, by the way, to repay it, of course we want that. On the other hand, I think of teachers, I think of social workers, I think of mental health counselors right now who have been doing a lot of great work during this pandemic. Could they use some of that financial relief? And in my view, I'm like, of course. They've been doing a lot of good work for all of us, for a lot of our children, for a lot of our communities. And I would want them to have some of that debt relief, because those are the types of careers that we know don't pay very well. And so on the one hand, yes, you should pay for it. On the other hand, we also have this need, and we need to get people to serve our communities that are most in need. Teachers are one example, as I mentioned. Mental health counselors are another. Social workers are another. And I would want them all to have a fair chance of doing what they chose to do.
Gerardo Ochoa from Linfield University, thank you very much for joining me on Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thank you for having me.